It's undeniable, and it's a human urge to want an explanation and to want to understand the world, right? Everyone, artists included, we all want to figure things out. So I think a lot of the works in this exhibition kind of speak to that. So on the surface, a lot of the works contain within them the look of an explanation. You know, if you wanted to explain something to someone, you would use different things. You would use a lecture format. You would use a kind of chart diagram thing to try to explain to someone some complicated idea. You would have some kind of scientific research process that you would undertake to try to understand something or to explain something. You know, you would show the fruit of your research. You would bring them to a museum, you know, an encyclopedic museum, which is technically, you know, traditionally the source of enlightenment and knowledge, and it's a place that the world civilization is explained to you, or whatever. There's different ways of explaining things to people. And a lot of these works contain those ways. They kind of look like explanations. They are diagrammatic. There is one that's very much kind of, it looks like a big research process. There's one, a video, which looks like a teacher explaining something to you. There is a beautiful 16mm film of walking through the Metropolitan Museum at night, or with all the lights off. And so they contain within them these, this awareness that we all want explanations, except that in the hands of artists, these are particular types of explanations, where yes, they might be a diagram, or they might be an entire theory of everything that shows you a cosmology of the world, but in Matt Mulliken's version, it's so hyper-subjective and hyper-idiosyncratic that to all of us, it's perhaps the most unhelpful explanation of the world. Even though visually it looks like someone trying to, you know, chart out the world for us and put the world and everything about it in different categories, on maps, on diagrams and symbols. And so it's kind of using that language of explanation, but yet it doesn't really help us, you know, it's not a very helpful explanation. So that's one example. Dave Hullfish Bailey is someone who, in a very rigorous and very thorough way, researches, spends a lot of time researching, field research, going to particular places and really finding out a lot of bibliographical research and finding source imagery and connections between things and histories between things. And he does all that research. That's all for real research. But the way that he then presents it to you, that he uses research to try to prove some kind of point, relationship between A and B, two things which have no relationship really to each other, and one does not cause the other at all. But kind of going with the theory that, you know, if you're, you know, here and if you dig deep enough, you'll get to China or whatever, even though there's really not much connection. But if you research it enough, you can make really any connection you want in a way. But again, how helpful of that is that, of an explanation of being able to better understand either of the two variables? And that's kind of the play he is doing in this idea of very real and rigorous and you know, it's not fake research. He's actually, I mean, it's all for real, except that it's all done without really ending up in something that is really that helpful in terms of actually explaining the world. So again, it looks like an explanation, but it doesn't quite really explain anything. So a lot of the connecting tissue, I think, is around that. Fishley and Weiss are two artists who really, to me, are perhaps the ones that best epitomize the spirit of the show. And they have two works in this exhibition. One of them is this hour-long video called The Right Way, which is the two artists walking around this beautiful, epic Swiss countryside over glaciers and through streams and in valleys and everything. And they are kind of pondering these existential questions about the meaning of life and what are we doing here and everything. And these are all, and so there's these two people who really are trying to figure out the world. and trying to kind of share the wisdom that they find on their discovery through this landscape. Of course, they're dressed in one is dressed in a rat costume and one is dressed in a bear costume, and so as an audience member kind of listening to this explanation, you know, you kind of take it with a grain of salt. I think anyone would, of how seriously can you take this explanation, because it's being given to you by this kind of very childish, these childish figures, and therefore that's another way of kind of puncturing the solidity of knowledge or of an explanation. It's a way of kind of unstitching knowledge. You know, here they are sharing their knowledge with you, but the way in which they're doing it kind of makes knowledge something that's a little bit, you know, unstitched and a little bit unraveling.